Helen was 14. As most teenagers do, he didn't take much care in his appearance. It's unnecessary. His hair was black, unkempt and messy. The color was almost as dark as the circles around his eyes, making him look as though he never slept. His seat was at the back of the classroom next to the window. He always sat there drawing quietly. His art was everything to him. He didn't like to socialize with people, making him somewhat of a loner. With a clatter of books and homework, another boy fell to the ground after school. That boy was Tom. Tom also kept to himself, but that didn't help to deter the more cruel students. He was made the victim of many of their pranks and jokes. This wasn't out of place, and the faculty didn't seem to care. Helen grew used to it, though he does feel bad for Tom. He doesn't want to interfere, else the crosshair would be drawn on him instead. During an off period, Judy, a fellow student, cried that she was missing her watch as she desperately searched for it in the halls. Helen sat beside the lockers in the corner. He looked up from his drawings and heard Judy's cries, but did nothing to help her. This was none of his business, and he's learned from experiences that getting involved would just lead to more trouble. "This watch?" Ben yelled as he shoved his hand into Helen's bag and pulled forth a watch glittering with shining fake diamonds. Ben was one of the louder and more obnoxious students in Helen's class, and he held the watch high in the air for all to see. Helen was extremely surprised to see the watch pulled from his own book bag, but he genuinely had no idea how it could have gotten there. "Oh, that's my watch!" Judy exclaimed as she quickly jumped to snatch the item from Ben's grasp. She held it, admiring the lost jewelry for a moment, before her elation melted away to suspicion. Both Judy and Ben eyed Helen. "It's not me," Helen said flatly. He didn't even raise his eyes from his sketches in the notebook before him. "Yeah, right," Judy sneered. Classes the next day grew more difficult. Helen, as always, sat at his desk, near the window, and drew in his notebook, but the atmosphere of the room had changed. Other students whispered in their seats around him, about him. The words that he could pick out from the murmurs were all terrible things: thief, loser, crazy. His eyes never left the page that his hands were quickly filling with sketches and doodles. He knew any retaliation was useless. Day after day, however, the whispers grew louder and the gossip grew worse. Each retelling of the events changed from person to person as the stories of Helen's supposed thievery exaggerated from innocent to flat-out conspiracy. Helen, always aware of the words around him, locked the pain from it deep inside himself. He remained silent. Silent until one day. Ben's hand moved like lightning and snatched the notebook out of Helen's grasp. "Why are you always messing around with this garbage?" he said, as he flipped through the pages, tearing them as he did so. Helen, without saying a word, had reached his limit and reached out to grab the notebook back. Ben, with a smile spread across his face, began ripping out pages and tearing them into tiny pieces in front of Helen. Seeing the scuffle, the rest of the class could not help but turn and stare. Small chuckles and oohs came from the onlookers that watched the drama unfold. Helen's emotions on the rise finally snapped, and he let a fist fly from his side to connect with Ben's jaw. The punch connected hard, but the impact felt to Helen like he was punching stone. Ben, the smile gone from his face, pulled back a fist of his own, and in a moment, Helen was flat on his back. His eye throbbed and was quickly filling with tears. The class around him erupted in a series of laughs and jeers. "Serves you right," called a voice from far off. "Loser got his ass kicked," came another. Spit wads and crumpled paper from his own notebook landed on him, and he curled his body into a ball to shield himself from the onslaught. The bell rang, ending their free period. The classroom suddenly hushed as students returned to their desks, and Ben spat once more onto Helen before also returning to his place in the room. Helen pulled himself up to his feet and sat at his desk. He collected what he could from his now torn and damaged notebook and picked up his pen once more. His eyes still burned, but as the teacher walked in, he lowered his head once again, lost in the sketches of his torn pages. It was an accident. "I just fell," Helen thought to himself, as the day's lesson began. The front door to Helen's home clicked shut as he returned from school. His parents came to him immediately to ask what had happened to his eye, but all he could repeat were his thoughts. "It was an accident. I just fell." His blue jacket covered any new bruises that he had received after class. All that was shown to his mom and dad was the now darkened black eye. Lying to his parents was nothing new. They always believed him. They believed him when he said that he was fine in school. They believed him when he said that he had many friends and lived a happy and carefree life. He absolutely refused to tell his parents the truth. Months passed. The bullying and mockery had grown far beyond any logical bounds, and the constant fights and beatings had become almost commonplace for Helen. Ben would stop him after school and push him around just to make himself and his friends laugh. Who had framed him in the first place? Why did the culprit do this? Well, these questions didn't seem to matter anymore. In fact, to Helen, nothing seemed to matter anymore. A message popped up on Facebook. Helen, you there? Who is this? I'm Tom, your classmate. Tom. You've never spoken to me before. What do you want? I've seen what you've been going through. So, what do you care? Leave me alone. You alright? It's none of your business. Listen, I know how you feel right now. You're in the same situation that I was. I really want to help you, but I can't. Okay? And I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry too. Helen actually typed a smiley face. It was a trivial act, but he felt connected to it. It was the first time he'd ever used the emoji. Tom was the last person that Helen ever thought that he would connect with. But for the first time in months, Helen seemed to have found someone who not only understood him, but felt like he was actually a friend. That friendship continued to blossom through the winter and into the spring. Tom and Helen were nearly inseparable. They texted each other, shared lunch together, and played online games. One fall day, however, that friendship finally took a turn for the worse. It was a warm afternoon for fall when Helen received the text. Meet me on the roof after first period today. We need to talk. Don't ask me why. Curiosity mounted in Helen. Never before had Tom been so demanding, and of course, never had he asked him to skip class. But not wanting to upset the balance of his new friendship, he did as he was told. He creaked the door open to the roof and saw Tom sitting with his feet dangling over the edge. Helen cautiously approached. What's going on? He asked. Tom, without standing, turned his head just slightly to look at Helen over his shoulder. Look, I have something I need to tell you. Do you remember the watch? Time had passed since the incident with Judy and her watch, but the ridicule had never stopped. Each day of school was still a living hell for Helen. Of course, how could I forget? Tom turned his focus away from Helen and looked at the 6 stories below him and the concrete parking lot. He sat, silently contemplating his words. Helen thought for a moment that he should sit beside him or speak first to break the growing awkwardness, but before he had the chance, Tom blurted out, "It was me." The words didn't register with Helen at first. He wanted to ask what was, before the scene replayed in his mind clearly. The watch that was in his bag on that day, watching Ben pushing Tom down the hallway while he laughed with his jock friends, and how the focus of their torture changed that day from Tom to Helen. "I stole the watch." Tom twisted his body to look at Helen as he spoke. Helen stood with his hand over his mouth. His body shook with anger. I put it in your bag. But you have to understand why. I was everyone's victim before you. I was the target, and I needed someone else to be. I had to be the abandoned toy while those assholes found something else to play with. You have to understand that I had to do this. Growing more frantic as he spoke, Tom grabbed at the legs of Helen's pants. His explanation turned into a fanatic's begging as he crawled his way closer. Helen, in a blinking white shock of anger, grabbed his collar and pulled him up to meet eyes. Tom's feet scraped the roof as he stumbled to keep his balance, though Tom fearfully looked at the expression shifting on Helen's face. Helen was miles away, lost in memories. The bullying that Tom had been through, the laughing of Ben and his gang, the look of Judy's face as she scoffed at Helen. He thought of how perfectly this all fell into place for Tom. And as long as Tom remained quiet about things, nothing would ever be normal again. Helen's life was ruined. Tom slipped. Everything changed to slow motion. Tom began tumbling backwards from the roof as his scream snapped Helen out of his trance. The surprise of this situation caused his grip to loosen from Tom's collar, and Tom's arms flailed to grab at something, anything to regain his balance. Helen reached out too. Tom was his only friend. He had to do something to help. He didn't want this. This wasn't supposed to happen. In the panic, their fingers brushed and bumped against each other. But as time returned to its normal speed, Helen fell to his knees, his hand outstretched to the ground below, and Tom met the hard earth with a wet crack. Helen held his eyes shut as tightly as possible. He didn't want to look. He had been on the internet. He had seen things, videos and pictures that he couldn't look away from, but this was different. This was his friend. He couldn't imagine what someone he knew would look like after a 6-story fall. Sirens arrived, and the police came to question him. Helen, shaking from shock, could hardly answer. The questions all came to him about texts that he received. Was Tom calling him to the roof to watch him commit suicide? Was he already on the roof after Tom had jumped? Did he know if Tom was bullied to this point? It was an accident. He just fell. Once again, Helen became the topic of discussion between students. Some of the students talked of the suicide and how tragic it was that Helen couldn't save him. Like a drama, they would say. He held his hand out from the roof trying to catch Tom minutes after he'd already hit the ground. Others, those disgusting, crueler others, talked of more morbid rumors. Of murder. "It's not my fault," Helen repeated to himself in his room. "It's not my fault." He cried to himself late into the night. Sitting at his art desk, images and sketches of people, places, and monsters became soaked in the dropping tears that he couldn't seem to stop. Guilt built up inside of him worse than he'd ever felt. Each second that passed, he could see Tom tumbling backwards off that roof. He could see his hands barely able to connect to Tom's, and his grip never able to get a strong hold of him. He could hear that wet crack of Tom's spine and skull splitting open on the street below. "It's not my fault," he repeated. Tom deserved to die." Helen sniffed and wiped the tears from his eyes. He picked up his pencil and again he began to sketch. He drew the faces that he'd come to know so well, the mocking faces of those who'd hurt him every day. Tom deserved to die. Tom had his punishment, and I suppose it's time for the others to have theirs. Isn't it? A smile creeped its way across his lips, and his hand worked wonders across the page. The sobbing from his room changed from those of sorrow to a laughter that echoed into the darkness. Maggie? Maggie, are you still there?" "Yeah, Judy. I had to run downstairs for popcorn." Who's going to come to tomorrow's Halloween party? I'm so excited." "Most of our class will be there. But I tried texting Ben so many times, and even though all the messages I sent were read, he just never replies to me. What the hell's wrong with him?" "He's probably working, I guess." "Something weird is happening. I've been hearing footsteps coming from my door for a long time. I think someone's walking around the dorm. Wait, I'll go check." Oh my god, Judy, I think there's someone here." "What? Like who? Are you for real? I'm not joking. I looked through the door. I saw a guy. Maybe call the police? I'm trying, Judy. I'm really scared. There's a guy outside who's wearing a mask and like a blue jacket. He's holding a knife. I think there's blood on him. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. He's knocking on my door now. Oh, God. Oh, God. Just calm down and find a weapon or something. Protect yourself. He's turning the knob. Good thing I locked it. I'm not getting through to the police. What do I do? Judy, I'm scared. Maggie. What should I do? Maggie, listen. Help me. Maggie, calm down. Maggie, are you there? Judy stared at her computer screen, waiting for a response. The room around her was dark, save for the dim glow from her laptop. Maggie was only a few doors down the hall in this dorm. Surely this was some kind of prank. There couldn't be someone here. She would have heard something, a scream, a crack, and a bang, but there was nothing. In fact, the longer she sat, waited, and listened, she realized just how silent it was. There was no movement of feet. There were no talking students outside. There was no laughter, or even the sounds of TVs passing through these thin walls. The dorm was completely quiet. Uncomfortable, she rushed to the light switch to bathe the room in light, but paused as the doorknob began to turn. Frozen in fear, she watched as the door slowly creaked open to a flickering fluorescent light in the hall, and the figure of a man in a mask and blue jacket. His clothes, hands, and the knife he carried were stained in blood, and the mask he wore on his face had finger painted on it a smiley face. She screamed. That night, all of the students who were in that dorm were murdered. No one knows how that killer did it. The murderer used the victim's blood to paint the walls of that dorm, with most of the paintings being smiley faces, and many of the corpses chopped and mashed, possibly to get more pigments. Helen noticed, the main suspect is still currently missing. However, in the chat log, where Judy and Maggie messaged each other, there was one last text. Don't be excited about tomorrow, because there will be no tomorrow.